And new this morning, this all comes as more than 1,000 students will flip their tassels and start a new journey this weekend.
The University of Minnesota Duluth and the College of St. Scholastica are hosting commencement ceremonies this weekend. Meet Rumi Faust, student body president, triple major and triple minor, and a leader in sustainability initiatives on campus. So she'll take the stage in front of classmates, family, and friends to deliver a speech centered on gratitude, excitement, and the memories that shape the college experience.
A lot of my speech talks about what are the stories you're going to tell when people ask what you did in college? Like, what is that memory that someone's like, what was your favorite memory in college? Or where did you go to school? Or what was your favorite memory? Like, what stories are you going to tell?
After graduation, Faust says she plans to continue her education in graduate school this fall.
UMD holds two ceremonies, one on Saturday at 10 a.m. and the other at 3 p.m. with Faust speaking at the 3 p.m. ceremony. St. Scholastica's commencement is Sunday at 2 p.m.